Hello, everyone. Welcome to our case study session. My name is Andres Marquez, and I lead the digital marketing portfolio here at Dun & Bradstreet. And I'm happy to be the opening act for Ben, who's going to be talking about how LiveRamp accelerated pipeline growth using a phased ABM rollout. Before we get started, though, I wanted to invite you all to visit us at the digital marketplace. We have handpicked useful resources there, and also we will be happy to answer any questions you have. So definitely visit us there, and we'll be happy to chat with you. Before I turn it over to Ben, though, I'd like to provide a little bit of context. So if you can move to the next slide, Ben. And for a lot of us in the B2B space, account-based marketing really holds the formula for us to be able to be more precise, very targeted and relevant as well. And this is proven out in a variety of surveys. And as you can see, ABM is increasing adoption and is the most effective, if not probably the only way to drive B2B marketing now. Next slide, please, Ben. However, ABM success won't happen overnight. ABM definitely is a journey, and doing it all at once will only make it even harder for you to get started and just like to progress. So as soon as you progress in your ABM journey, focus definitely, it's going to dictate how much impact you will get from your ABM efforts and how fast you can move towards the next step. So definitely a key message here, it's that ABM is a process. And as you are just getting started and moving forward on your journey, you'll be able to see those results being more effective. And as you're measuring your progression, you'll be able to capitalize not only on the results you're getting, but also on the adoption inside the organization. So with that, I'm going to stop talking now, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Ben, so you can just like walk us through your story here.
Wonderful. Thanks for that introduction, Andres. And yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about LiveRamp's journey, kind of how we started crawling into our walk and eventually running and kind of maturing out over time. Just a little about myself. Been in tech for over 10 years. Marketing is my passion. I love solving problems, and I found a really great role, I think, for that here at LiveRamp, leading the omni-channel strategy and operations team on demand gen. LiveRamp, we are the world's leading data connectivity platform. We have a robust suite of products that are designed to resolve identity challenges that our customers experience, and that comes down to activating and providing relevant experiences, both online and offline world, as well as being able to measure that and actually have outcome-based performance measurement. I'm going to talk about where LiveRamp's account-based marketing strategy started and kind of how we got it to where it is today. It's been part of our DNA since I joined in the very beginning, back in 2015. Account-based marketing was kind of a new thing then, and we were fortunate in that we're establishing demand generation at that period of time and could really do it all around ABM best practices. So we did a pretty good job with that, and I have a couple slides where I'm going to show when we were running, in earlier days account-based marketing, and then the challenge that we were met with along the way was a vastly scaled and more complicated business. The challenge from ops was to remain relevant in the organization. This is a really helpful framework in terms of the different categories of activities that ops needs to be thinking about for account-based marketing. And I'm going to come back to this throughout the presentation, but real quick, high level segment, this is just all about what is the target demand, the target audience out there. It's about your ICP, the ideal customer profile, and using data intelligently and signals from AI to help create the best segments. Attracting, what channels are you going to use, right? And how are you going to activate these different audiences throughout their buyer's journey? Engaging is like when you start spicing things up with tactics that help you do better personalization in an automated way. And then of course, like don't do it if you can't measure it, right? Early days in ABM, back in 2016 was when we were like, we might have been like walking or running, I would say. Our ecosystem includes a lot of different players in ad tech, and that's our brands, our agencies, the tech platforms, data providers and publishers. They all have different incentives in the way they interact in the ecosystem, and life was a little simpler for us because we focused mainly on brands. The reason for this was like the main KPI, the one like big KPI demand gen was measured on for our performance was like how much pipeline did you source for net new logos. And so that was wildly successful for several years. But you'll see over time as the business matured, it became a smaller slice of the pie. So when we were just starting in the early days, like having an ICP is kind of a, well, it seems like a very hard problem to solve when there isn't one. The ideal customer profile is like the compass rose or the map that the whole organization can rally behind and really truly understand at a very like detailed data-driven way, like who are our ideal customers and like how can we identify them systematically and like keep that alignment as the company grows. So when we're crawling or walking, we understand like, hey, we're getting wins in common industries, and we're starting to see that like these brands are buying like a certain type of product, and oh, we're starting to uncover certain revenue thresholds, and like that's the beginning of account-based marketing. From there, like we were able to establish our first list of 500 target accounts. When we were running, like we had tapped into additional layers of data insights provided by Lattice at the time, now DMB. AI signals that help us understand like in-market buyers at an account level categorically were really helpful for actually picking out and activating against the accounts that were most likely to buy. This is a case study from a really successful campaign that we ran in the early days when I'd say we were running. And this was a multi-channel, like multi-touch SDR aligned campaign that Demand Gen ran around a new product that had emerged at the time, serving our customers that are also using Google for their advertising. So in this example, we paired up with our SDRs and we said, hey, we're going to be running some air cover, some advertising campaigns. You see the little image that says offline data means online there. That was personalized by industry for the brands, for the most relevant impression at that stage in their awareness journey. What we saw is by like keeping tightly integrated multi-channel tactics focused on like the true buyers that are in market, we saw great conversion rates, like 33% of the like cold net new leads that we sourced for this, and then extracted from which like the ones that were demonstrating signals, those converted when the messaging was relevant for them. After that, the business scaled. I guess that's perhaps you know, a symptom of the success. But things that happened in our world was like, oh, we're acquiring companies left and right. We're launching and redefining product lines left and right. And we're separating from our former parent company, Axiom, and going public. Like for an operations person, like that is like a lot of very catastrophic events. And from there, like we rebuilt even better. So today, like rather than just carving out brands and the different industries within that for our messaging and our activation and engage needs, like we're actually thinking about the whole ecosystem today. And we're enabled to do this because we have aligned on really common frameworks across the entire marketing team, like who are our content personas. There needs to be like a simple, general like bucket at the awareness level that everyone agrees on so that The messages can be personalized, and then you can track that all the way down through the funnel as they convert, and eventually, you hope they're attached to an opportunity. So the series decisions demand unit waterfall is something that our team tries to resemble in the best way possible. And what this represents for us is a repeatable demand waterfall that we can define at a systems and data level for all of our stakeholders, like our integrated marketing managers, or the leads of different groups in marketing, like demand gen, content, product marketing. So this is very prescriptive. Like our target demand is our CRM account. So we've matured this over the years. We have matured the different kinds of marketing audiences that we serve. It's grown, but we don't keep accounts in Salesforce if they're not a target. So those have been deleted. Any MOPS folks also know that can be kind of a painful exercise, but let me tell you, it's worth it. It's worth it to delete those accounts. So the next layer down is, after you've evaluated who the audience is, the target demands, what are the ones that are actually exhibiting those signals? This is when you're walking or perhaps running, you're able to tap into intent, like purchase intent signals, like you might get from Bombora data. And then all the way down the funnel to close, you have your more traditional kind of engagement signals like marketing touch points and marketing qualified leads. A aspiration for us this year is to get the marketing qualified account concept down. I lived in worksheets and lists of IDs for what seemed like an eternity as our marketing audiences scaled. People were coming to us throughout the org. They're like, hey, I have a list of accounts, and these are the right ones to buy this thing, and you hear that from half a dozen or more people throughout the org. All of a sudden, there's a lot of account lists, and that can be a really big headache, for ops to manage. We matured a list and ID management process for our different account groups into a marketing audience tag. The marketing audience tag here is a multi-pick. This perhaps might be the only use case I have ever found for a multi-pick list that I like. And it's very helpful to have a contains operator when an account can represent more than one thing for different business units in the org. The business model that we have is such that we start with one group and want to grow within that enterprise brand into other business units. So these marketing audience tags help us organize the account lists in ways that enable us to scale the personalized messaging across these campaigns. So here's an example of that. We're running digital advertising creative right now, addressing a content persona for B2C digital marketers on the left, tends to align with our brands and agencies. And on the right is for what we think of as the sell side, or the publisher side of the ecosystems. Different messages are important for different needs in the ecosystem. And this has been really helpful in achieving conversions at scale. And then here's another example as well, where we're doing more digital creative for CMOs on the left and our sell side pubs on the right. Another helpful consideration, I think, for a MOPS professional and account-based marketing oriented team is consider your MQLs, and if MQLs are less than desirable, when you go around asking SDRs and sales folks across the org, consider paring it back and only sending very highly qualified MQLs. This is a change that we made over the last year. I don't think we ever sent horrible MQLs, but we did have a much looser threshold for how many campaign responses you needed to have to become an MQL if you aren't a hand raiser. And we further matured it such that if you're a target account now, you only need 2 responses. But if you aren't a target account, you need at least 4. And you need even more if you have like a poor fit persona as well. So this has vastly reduced the number of MQLs that we're sending, but it has also like gone a long way to improving the relationship that we have with our sales development team, and also improving our conversion rates. Like, who doesn't like hot conversion rates for MQLs to ops? So I want to take a minute to talk about account engagement. This is like a term that I have heard so much more frequently in the last several years than before. And I have a lot of people asking me for like, hey, I have a campaign and the goal is like increase account engagement. So I think it's helpful to unpack what account engagement is and like beginning to help people understand like when a MOPS team is able to talk about the marketing campaigns that we're running in terms of the outcomes that they have, and everyone else understands like these different outcomes, it's a beautiful thing. And like teams can also like see the flip side of that, like, and like I've experienced this as well, where like you say one outcome and like the person hearing it thinks it's another. So when an account-based organization and like marketing team is truly flying, like they're measuring more than one thing at these accounts, because it matters what you measure at varying parts of the buyer's journey. And you are benchmarking these and actually beginning to forecast so that there's a repeatable conversion waterfall. So account engagement can be hairy. Like this is definitely not a crawling or like getting started with ABM nut to crack. But as account-based marketing strategies mature, account engagement measurement needs will also like grow. So this is something to be careful for and just kind of consider along the way. Here's a slide representing like the early days thing that we were measuring. Source by marketing as pipeline for net new logos that marketing sourced. Then an SDR like took that MQL, qualified it, and converted it into a new opportunity record. This isn't the most popular one in our org today, but it is also a really like well-governed and consistent measure for us, and you know, probably more helpful for new logo measurement than, say, for example, upsells. It has been extremely helpful to incorporate a multi-touch measurement model. Again, this is something that is not an early days ABM measurement tactic that I would recommend, but it is something to consider, and like in the walking phase, like begin putting the pieces in place to enable this kind of measurement. It took us many years to get like most of the organization comfortable with these concepts, but when you get there, like the impact is profound. Like measuring like throughout the entire buyer's funnel, like a first touch channel and like a middle touch lead create channel and the opportunity create channel gives a really rich representation of the different kinds of marketing channels that are more or less effective for creating engagement along the funnel. I think it's also important to simplify your lead lifecycle conversion rates. I used to have a lot more. We've really pared it down to just these core conversion rates, the suspects, the leads we bring in, and how many of them become MQLs. This is a nice quality threshold measure for us. How many MQLs are actually converting into ops? My goal this year is to get it like from 7.9% here closer to 15 or 20%. And that will have a profound impact on the amount of pipeline marketing and demand gen are able to deliver for the work. It's also important to think about your audiences and like track how these trend and grow over time. So this is a representation of our content personas and like how those have stacked up in terms of leads and persons that we're adding to the database over year. Like looking at funnel throughput and looking at stage velocity, like can be very enlightening things to bring to the table in any conversation you're having with sales leadership. I've found that off-end sales really just is not aware of like what is happening, you know, prior to the opportunity funnel beginning. I think that everyone knows that like marketing is happening, but the extent to which and how long that journey is like happening can only really be visualized when marketing brings that data to the table. What we saw is like what we thought was 120-day, you know, opportunity life cycle turned out to be closer to like 240. So it's pretty wild, like when you bring that to the table and consider in terms of what you can expect when you launch a campaign and like how long that's going to take to generate customers or growth in those customer accounts. So kind of wrapping up, account-based marketing has been a wildly successful strategy for demand generation at LiveRamp. Over the years, like we've really honed in on like what our target account lists are and our ability to split out different marketing audiences without accidentally overlapping messaging, you know, on the same account in a bad way has gotten much better. And we see better reach, we see increased engagement, like when we're focusing on the right accounts and only bringing in like leads from those accounts, like everything all the way down to your lead conversions and MQL achievements are going to improve. And that's a wrap. Andres, I think at this point, I'll hand it over to you, and thank you very much.
No, absolutely, Ben. Thank you so much. This was definitely a great story, and really appreciate you joining us today. Before we wrap it up, though, I would like to ask you, what's probably the advice you would give to someone who's just getting started with ABM? Here, typically, and as I mentioned earlier in the conversation, we truly believe that focus is going to dictate the success, especially if you're just like getting started. One of the things we're usually seeing and prescribing to clients is just like create your segments, have your universe of accounts pretty well defined, and then start going after them in one channel at the beginning. It's just like start testing that out and communicate and go after them, leveraging one channel ideally, and then just like measuring how are you performing. But yeah, just curious to hear your thoughts around that.
If you asked me like 4 years ago, like how should you plan account-based marketing? Like my answer probably would have been a little bit more leaning into like have a comprehensive plan like in the beginning and like be prepared to execute on that. Like I think that's just kind of a tendency us marketers have. And like I've just seen that is like not practical, you know, in reality. And so like the advice would be like when you're just getting started, like don't let all this stuff overwhelm you and don't think you have to figure it all out at once. Like it does take time, and like you're only going to get better through consistent experimentation. You know, so like you're saying, like start with one channel, see how that performs, like learn from it, go bigger if, you know, there's a certain audience or type of account you're pursuing where it's really working, right? And like these things over time inform a much broader and comprehensive account-based strategy where when you're walking, you're beginning to listen for more signals, right? Of like the ones that are actually in market now. And when you're running, you're constantly like iterating on campaigns, like in a closed loop feedback kind of way. So yeah, the advice is like, just start with that one channel and like become an expert in your ideal customer profile and come to the table with sales leadership and like teach them something. Like if you teach them something, like you'll be their friend. And like that is like an important moment to have. And marketers have access to a lot of like very healthy and helpful data. And like the signals you will bring to the table, like that extra layer of AI and data-driven insights, like will help like both teams to perform better.
No, absolutely. That totally makes sense. Of course, you guys have gone through a great journey. And as you have progressed through those different steps, you've been able to just like see those great results. So probably the final comment or just like final question for you is, what would you recommend to those who are already doing ABM, but want to scale their efforts further and probably test different things to accelerate their results? We typically see as a good practice, but it's just like probably a good time to start getting more sophisticated building segments and also personalizing the customer journey. So probably layering on intent or just like de-anonymizing web visitors and personalizing that web experience is probably a good step. And then of course, exploring further channels as you're progressing in your ABM journey. But of course, just curious to see what are your thoughts and recommendations for those who want to move forward to the next level.
I mean, those are excellent recommendations, Andres. I'd say along those lines, something that like we could have done like sooner in retrospect is like really establish a well-governed like exercise for benchmarking performance across those channels, you know, for the different kinds of accounts. That is something that like we did do eventually, but I just think that if we had done that exercise of like really formalizing the measurements and like the inputs and outputs and making sure they're all consistent, like that would have helped us like experiment and iterate faster in the beginning. So yeah, does that make sense? Just like be mindful about like the data strategy and like, you know, be careful to make sure that it's going to enable like a true means of benchmarking performance.
No, absolutely. And once again, thank you so much, Brian. And thanks everyone for joining us today. Again, don't forget to visit us at the Digital Marketplace. We will be there happy to answer any questions you may have. And we also have curated a set of great resources that are going to help you accelerate your ABM efforts. So definitely looking forward to seeing you all there. And yeah, it was great sharing this time with you all. So thank you so much.
I had fun. Thank you too, Andres. It was a pleasure.
Okay, thank you.